Greetings. Alright, so I went ahead and dug out the Jane Davenport fountain pen. Wow. My brain was like, calligraphy pen? No, that's the wrong word. Yeah, so there's that. Currently looking at the instruction book, but this is working like this is exactly what I would expect. Alright. Alrighty, so that's about what I expect. This has you actually dip the whole tip of the pen in and fill it up through the converter cartridge. I've seen plenty where it's like you load up the converter cartridge and then you put it down in, and then you have to wait for the ink to go ahead and flow through the body, which that time is probably less than doing it this way, so that's the way that we'll do it. So that's fun. But yeah, I was thinking for our PI Pulpo here that we would go with using the Grape Ice Pop. Put some purple in here, and I was thinking I'd do some base washes with the Autumn Brown Graphitint. Even though that is the one that is the most fugitive, I like that it is a slightly cooler leaning color out of the reds. Like it reminds me of like a slightly more violet. It's still a nice earthy red. It is still definitely a warm tone, but in comparison to the other tones that are present, definitely reads just a touch cooler to me. It's kind of like a really wonderful like brick red tone. And speaking of bricks, we will be putting in some bricks and putting in our headline today, and then I can go ahead and work on the rest of this. There's a lot of shading that still needs to be done, a lot of contrast we still need to add. We're going to get into it pretty quickly today, so I do want to thank you so much for joining me. That random pencil that you saw me drop on my floor is one of the Graphitints. I was debating if I want to use the aubergine at all to go ahead and do some of the shading for the octopus, and it's so much more of a cool leaning purple that I don't think I want to use it. I'm leaving it out just in case, because I do tend to do a lot on a whim, because I'll just see how things are shaping up and then I'll decide, okay, blam, I want to use that anyway. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with the bottom of the octopus. I have not gotten that far. Since we already have a lot of these washes in, it would be pretty hard to introduce a tentacle coming out. I think it's just... he's just sitting, well, not sitting, but standing here probably on his legs. So I'll probably just tone this all dark to fit into the background. At least some type of shadow where like his other legs can exist. So we'll just kind of have a guess at how his body is sitting for all of that. I am so far behind the curve today. I am actually still drinking coffee, which you'll see happens pretty rarely in streams anymore. I've been trying to gear myself up to being up a little earlier after my long time night owl existence. So it's very, very hit or miss, and I still need to take my allergy medicine even. So hopefully you've been having a great day, and we're going to get started here. And I was really bad with my coffee. I have a coffee pot that doesn't have an auto shut off. It's an old style carafe one, which I really like. I've become a convert. They cost a little bit more than the regular glass carafe and like separate big plastic machine coffee pots. They're like about $10 more. But they take up less space. Like, if you felt like it, you just put the craft up into a kitchen cabinet, and then you have more counter space. It's magical. So, I like that. I don't like that you can't just turn it on to heat up a little bit of coffee. That's something that I used to do once in a blue moon, because sometimes it is nice to have just, like, hot coffee. But for the most part, I'm one of those people who, like, I make a pot of coffee, and then I go ahead and turn it off, and I'll microwave my coffee. My other half is probably cringing as I say this if he's on. But anyway, yeah, he says microwave changes the texture, and it's something either I don't notice it or I don't mind. I'm not sure where my taste buds are at for that. My taste buds are wacky anyway, because after having COVID last February, so it's been over a year ago now. But no, not last February. It was the middle of January where I had the positive test. But yeah. After that, my taste buds have been just wacky in general. I don't know why I'm grabbing the pencil. I guess it was to give some definition for some tentacles down here, but I think we're just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna imply some shape and form in the shadows there. My brain's kind of like, okay, what are we working on? Because I'm like excited puppy mode, I guess. Let's go ahead and indicate some bricks. How about that? We'll do a little bit on the top, just that way I can let that be ready. Actually, I really don't see the brick texture until we get back to this ladder, which this ladder is practically disappeared. I really should have a harder little eraser. If you have like I think it's by Tombow, it's called the Mono 1. It's an itty bitty little thing. That is great. Some mechanical pencils also have that little itty bitty little nub for an eraser. That would be perfect for this too. So just go ahead and erase in a brick pattern. This isn't really lifting. I feel like my eraser is flexing too much to really like get down into detail sorts of things. So that experiment, compared to the cheaper paper I was using, does not seem quite so valid now. I'm going to try to do like a strip of erasing, and maybe I could just backfill some shape. That's not really moving anywhere. So much for that test yesterday. Apparently that only works on like the cheapest of cheap papers. That's slightly disappointing. I can go in and I can glaze a secondary layer, and we can go ahead and imply that texture now. And I feel like if I'm doing that, I need to be doing that really quickly because we want this top section to be drying, so I can be adding more to it. So I'm just grabbing which one were you? The tinted charcoal in Burnt Earth. I know this one takes a moment to re-wet. So I have a nice puddle of water on the top of it, and then I'm just adding to the puddle that I have already on the palette, because I probably will always keep like a permanent little puddle of this color if I'm using it for anything, and I just keep adding to it as I need to go. It seems to re-wet decently from the blob in the palette, I guess because it's plastic and it's a really thin layer as opposed to the big brick of pigment that sits in the half pan. This is probably mixed up too dark for what I need, but I would rather a nice dark puddle of it, just because it does take a moment to re-wet, and it's super easy to go ahead and thin it out. Let's make a secondary puddle with a bit more water. I'm still going at this with the unknown number 8, even though honestly these are some itty bitty brick. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna change my mind on that real quick. I'm gonna come down with a detail brush. I'm probably going to just grab our script liner, because that guy holds a good bit of pigment and water, and this is very granular. So I see that as probably a good thing. And I'm just going to apply just some random bricks here and there. This actually needs a darker wash to it too. Alright, so I need to cant this on an angle because at the top all of these bricks are running slightly down. Once we get to about here, they're more just horizontal. I'm going to be real light about these lines because I don't want to be at this all day. And I'm just slowly having these go into an ever-increasing angle. I'm just rocking out with whatever pigment's on here. I'm not really trying to redip, I'm not trying to go back and forth to portray a whole lot of detail. Because I want some of that texture there, but I also don't want this to be like smacking you over the head, here's some bricks over here, like, nah. We'll do a couple more rows down this way. I did go ahead and do a pigment reload to come down here. That's just because they seem a little bit stronger here in the mid-light. Up here it gets a little bit darker again, so you're going to see less detail. That's why I let the pigment just run off. And a slight reload. I'm not even loading this to like max capacity because this brush can take a lot. Just a couple shapes here and there. Alternating. And all these rows are perfectly straight. That's okay. And just go ahead and see how that's shown up through the camera. You can see a little bit. That's not bad. That's about what I want. I don't want it to be, like I said, a smacking you over the head type of texture. Getting back to my Twitch window. Say hi, everybody. Thanks so much for hopping on. Alright, so a couple more bricks. Do not dip the paint into your coffee. Alright, quick little reload, and we're just gonna let that taper off as I move upwards. Just slapping in some quick texture here and there. I'm kind of just doing this quick little back and forth. I think I'm actually missing some of the bricks, like I'm just mixing the rows together. I think I did the lines a little bit finer up here. That's okay. I don't mind if it's just randomly picking up a line here and there, just a implied linear texture. That's fine by me. Though, I do want to go ahead and pop in that boy, I would love my brain to keep up with me today. How about that? Yeah, a little bit more shadow here. I'm going to kind of scribble some texture. This is still in the lighter puddle of the tinted charcoal, burnt earth. We're still playing with that because we're right in this mid value. I'm gonna go a little darker right here because that shadow is kind of linear. I'm not trying to have this be too dark, but that looks a little better. And then the ladder itself, this edge is kind of catching the light, so I think this is where I'm going to break into that, doing a slightly more opaque color. This is the Storm Gray, the pastel shade. I'm going to mix it a bit on the thin side because I don't want it to dominate. And I'm grabbing eraser bits that are up there. Awesome. And that's not dark enough. or I should say light enough for what I'm looking for. So I'm going a little bit heavier. Hopefully not catching my little eraser bits. And I want this to just be a little more opaque. Trying to be very gentle at the opacity here. I was thinking, later on, after I was saying like I would just do the title in gouache, like we have some opaque pigments from this set. I'm going to try to stay within this set. And speaking of stuff that's going to need to dry, let's get into our... I'm going to go with this straight up black. I want this to be kind of neutral, pretty dark. And I'm going to leave some space because they have that wonderful rim lighting up here. And this is one of those areas in the reference that is like a hit you over the head type of tone. And I should not be doing this with this itty bitty brush. Wow, I can English. I'm going to grab the number 8 just so this isn't going to take all day. I don't mind if it goes a little bit more translucent on this edge because this is where the highlight is. I'm going to try to let that just taper off. And bring the other line up to it. Wow, my line keeps going all rigid. There we go. Alright. And then... yeah, there's a little bit more light on this side. I'm going to try to leave myself plenty of space to go ahead and do that rim lighting. I definitely need this to be drying before I can get to the rim lighting. There is some up here. I'm only doing like half of this cord as gently as I can. Upwards and onwards. There we go. Alright, and I'm gonna hit this again, because this area was a little translucent as it's drying. Alright, and so now we have some much needed heavy contrast. And I can also get back to this edge here and deepen this a bit. So this is the sepia ink. Graphitint, if I recall. No, Inktense. Sepia ink Inktense. And we're just gonna hit this for a second pass. I don't mind this section where it's kind of tapering off, but I want this bit right at the edge to be a bit deeper. I'm just gonna go heavy with the shadow over here, because why not? I'm going to grab a little bit of water and taper this edge, just a touch. Like, it actually is not a bad spot for me to just let that go really, really heavy onto the whole side of the fedora, let that get washed out. Like, washed out meaning you can't tell the difference between the fedora and the wall. Because that happens a lot in a lot of these noir films. Like, just stuff will just vanish into darkness. And it is a pretty effect. I'm going a little darker over here. Looks like that dried a little lighter. I'm just kind of dry brushing. Make sure the pigment's pretty heavy through here. Alright, that should be good. I do need to put the bricks in. I'm trying to rush to do some of this texture because, like I said, I want to get to the fun stuff. And so far, you guys are just seeing me like, okay, let's do the plotting details. And I'm like, eh. All right, so I'm taking a puddle of that same sepia ink. That's the Inktense. I'm gonna mix it up kind of thin. Do our brick texture. I'm going to do that even though this wash is still drying. This should actually be a little bit deeper here. But I kind of want to see what it looks like with doing some more bricks before I darken it. So it's one of those, I'll add some detail and it may just wind up being details that get washed out. So I'm gonna tilt this a little bit because it's a little bit easier for me to do some of these angles. Wow. Okay, now this track seems like I should be doing something like Rocketeer themed. Like, this is the wrong end of the 1940s spectrum there. Alright. It's already gotten a little light. Don't worry about it. My bricks should be a little smaller. And I am stopping to grab a little bit more pigment here and there. Because I'm seeing that this one seems to be fading pretty quick. I guess maybe I mixed it up a little too thin. And now that I'm seeing some of the brick texture here, I'm just kind of bringing this over. Trying to keep these on an even keel. This feels very, very adventure-y / piratey. I think I commented on that yesterday. Ooh, that line was bad. Yeah, you know what? This will be where the bricklayer had his unprofessional cousin jump in and he messed up that line. I don't know. I'll make sure the shadow's a little heavier there, I guess. Ooh, excuse me, I'm just gonna mute for a second while I get to my nose. Alright, that's better. Alright, so I do like some of the texture. I'm gonna do a couple of these a little bit darker up here. So even though this is supposed to get like darker, like that I'm going to do another wash over this section, I also want to make sure that like this detail has a purpose. This is one of those details that you don't really see it unless you're looking for it. In general, it's just you'll subconsciously notice it, but you won't really focus on it. Or at least not initially. Alright, a little more pigment, a little more water. Oh, I haven't grabbed the water. The water is over here, just so you guys know. Like, in case I go to grab for it and you didn't see me mention it. Normally I will, but I'm talking about the water that was already in this puddle. Alright, so some of these bricks are huge. They should all be smaller in realistically, they should all be smaller. Wow. I'm just having trouble spitting out thoughts today. Still trying to do kind of an offset pattern. And yeah, all of this should be smaller in scale, but I'm not going to I'm not trying to do this accurate to the scene. I just want the impression of those things here. Alright, so that's good. 24 minutes already. Yikes. Alright, I'm getting some coffee. My message. You're welcome to go ahead and chat or comment. Yeah, as always, feel free to comment. Alright, so I finished the coffee. At least something's getting finished today, but wow, I'm harsh on myself right now. I don't know why. I really do want to get that darker wash on here too, so I want to give that a second. Get back into developing shadows. I don't want to go heavier on this shadow yet, just in case that's still drying. Let's go heavier on this one. This one was with the burnt earth tinted charcoal. So I'm actually going to make sure my brush is pretty sparse on the water side. And I'm just going into the pre-mixed puddle that we already had going on our palette. This is the only one that I've really pre-mixed a puddle for, other than the like the teeny mix of sepia that I just did, the sepia ink. Is there sepia and sepia ink, or sepia? No, you'll have to let me know. What's your preferred pronunciation for that one? I'm gonna go a bit darker with the value on this. This goes deeper into this wall, which is what the main point of me going over here, and this is the lower wall. Why am I worrying about the lower wall? Especially if I'm going to be putting my hand in it to work on our PI here. I don't know, I'm a crazy person. This lack of detail was driving me nuts. And I'll just grab a little bit of water, soften that up this way. Alright. Well, fine. I'll let that dry now. Yeah, it does look weird, this one here. Like, if I need a darker value in the future, I'm not grabbing that. I'm going to grab something else. What was the other? The burnt embers tinted charcoal might be better. I don't know. But yeah, this looks weird. It actually, like, dried a slightly weird texture to me. So I'm just going over this with water. Going to, like, kind of lift it, start, disrupt it, pick up a little bit of the pigment. Because that's what I think is bugging me about this section, is how much pigment deposit there is. It looks weird. It has an effect of, like, making it slightly cooler than it is when it's sitting there that heavy. I don't like that. So if I do need to darken this, I'm going to glaze it with something else. Because the puddles of pigment sitting there the way it was meh. Let's see. This should be a little bit drier by now. I'm going to just have a little bit of water in the brush. It's not, like, sopping. And grab a touch of that sepia ink. I'm gonna mix that into a little preset puddle so I can darken this area just a touch. Especially up top. Darken it up top and kind of bring it down. I'm gonna let this be streaky. We're just gonna go there. I like that. It's not accurate to the scene, but you know what? I don't want everything to be smooth. I want to leave some of the that granulation present. As long as the granulation doesn't look too cool in an area. What else? I think that's enough for up here, so we can let that dry. we can go ahead and start working on our PI Pulpo. So let's get the pen assembled. I'm also trying to jump over here, just make sure everything's going okay. This session's only 26 minutes, which is wrong. So if you're joining us live and you see that like things wind up being really choppy, because every once in a while I do have some network issues, what you can do is you can just join me over on Twitch live, and over there you know, you'll see the whole video from the stream. That tends to work out a little bit better, because my side will say that it's still streaming longer than Twitch accepts it sometimes. If that makes sense. So it's a weird scenario. But anyway, alright, so I have the converter cartridge in the tip of the pen. So it's got this handy little slide bit, so we want to make sure that plunger is down before we go ahead and put that in our ink. I just have to grab our ink up here. That is near my desk, Lady Rose Trio, there we go. Yeah, I don't know how this is gonna go, so it's a fun experiment, and it is ink. We're all about the ink this month, which is a little bit crazy to me right now. I was just watching a charcoal demonstration, and I'm kind of like itching to get back into dry media. I was like, of course that's happening. I'm only halfway through this challenge month. So it's just one of those, outlining how much I like to bounce around between stuff. Okay, so let's put you in here. Hopefully you are submerged enough. We'll find out. Yep. Maybe the cartridge wasn't in there enough. Alright, so I'm going to do this over a paper towel, a napkin, something, but we'll go ahead and just try to minimize splatter on everything else. So I'm putting the plunger back down, and that might push air out for ink. Okay, so pop that back down. I'll give it another try, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to go straight to loading the cartridge and then assembling the pen. So we'll try their instructions again. Yeah, that did not pull. Well, that's annoying. I had it submerged into the glass bottle as far as I could put it. It should have drawn. This feels like a nice snug fit, so that should be fine. I'm gonna lay this down on here, just that way if that's dripping ink, it's not gonna be dripping it all over the place. This is a really, really heavy napkin. It's actually one of the ones from the last place I worked. I used to work at a seafood place, so they have nice thick napkins. But that was a great one for traveling to and from work. I can go ahead and work on some painting. Yeah, so right now I have this plunger down in the ink, and I'm trying to draw it up, and there we go. We finally got some. It's not completely full, but you know what? I am not gonna fiddle with it beyond this. One, because normally if I mess with ink too much, I wind up looking like a Dalmatian. And I don't think that's quite so entertaining as getting some of this finished. So we'll be happy with what we got. I don't need this to be completely full anyway. I'm going to assemble the pen, and then I'm going to wipe off the excess ink. Actually, I'm going to wipe off the excess ink on this first. Just kind of roll the side a little bit. So that doesn't need to be drying on there if we don't need it to. Alright. It feels nice and firm. It doesn't feel like it's going to go down any further. We'll put the body on. And I'm going to wipe off the whole front of the nib because we had that all the way down in our ink. Well, that's a good sign. Getting to this section of the nib, this is where the split is that allows the ink to be drawn downward. And while we're rolling it over there, it's already pretty well saturated in ink. I don't know that that's from when we dipped it in, or if that is from it already receiving ink from the cartridge. So could be either. I could be dealing with a ridiculous air bubble, so this might be a frustrating process once we try to draw. I do know that I want to start on some plain paper before I'm getting into it with this, just in case. So we'll just go ahead and grab the grab this. My little one is a little loud. Alright, so it's writing. Now it's a question of how do I want to do this line work. I'm going to grab my reference for our octopus friend. Oh, I forgot to link that yesterday. I'll make sure I get that link today. As long as my little one is not too squirmy about it. Sometimes I get rushed in trying to wrap things up for the day. Great, so I'll move that over. So if I would increase the brightness a bit. There we go. Now I'm going to imply a little bit of the texture that I can see, but I'm not going to sit here and do all of that like completely faithfully. We're just going to take on some of that impression, and I'm going to go a bit less with that as we come down, even though realistically this texture is all over him. This looks weird. I'm going to leave up here a little bit more plain because there is some like orangey tones, and because those are such prominent colors in this shade and tone set, I'm going to let those shine through. I gotta say, this is kind of nice. Not needing to keep re-dipping. Do some bits here and there. I really don't know how this is gonna go. I'm trying to only do details that we need. And at the same time, I'm getting really into it. It's the trouble with the challenge, because I feel that pressure to go ahead and try to have everything finished. Because I do want to get to all the prompts, and I already have a suspicion that some of these prompts are just going to have to be a like sketches at some point, because I'm not going to have enough time to go ahead and dedicate to get everything developed as far as I would like. No, I'm gonna let some of this get kind of scribbly. This is definitely not the approach I thought I was going to take. I thought I was just going to do line work and some like general shading, and instead I have this texture going on. Go pretty dark with that here. It's going to be kind of a weird mix of some spots will be a little bit more textured, some spots will be a little bit more shaded. I am kind of tempted to go ahead and break out the brush. I'm going to reinforce a little bit of these lines with the autumn brown graphite, because I do want to bring in some of that reddish orange that's going on. There's a definite blue cast coming through for the eyes. I might grab the graphite for that, because I'm pretty sure there's a blue there. And I want to stick within the media that's used for this, and I'm also trying not to introduce too many other things, so that if you're following along you can generally stick within the set. But that is one thing I was thinking of when I started getting into this, was like, what about blue? I do also have Inktense Pencils, so if you have either of those sets, you can go ahead and pop in a little bit of another shade. The big difference between the Inktense and the graphite has a little bit of graphite to it, but because you have the shade and tone set, you can go ahead and put some graphite in. So if you're trying to get that more muted tone, or like a touch of like kind of like a pewtery sparkle, the graphite's good for that too. There's a really subtle sheen going on back here. It's a very muted sheen, so it's kind of like grunge fairies as opposed to just happy sparkly fairies that we tend to do in the West. Yeah, I feel like I kind of put myself into a wall a little bit with this texture thing going on. We're already 45 minutes in. I'm going to do just a little bit more. These lines kind of change depending on the flow of the skin. This color did wind up being really good. It's nice and muted. It fits in with the rest of the surroundings here, giving some color but not too much. There's definitely more texture that stands out down here, bits up here. I'm going to just kind of do a little bit of stippling with the brush, because I don't want to sit here and do all of this texture. It's just one of those, like, I don't feel like that's the most exciting thing I could be spending my time on. So yeah, capping that. I'm going to see how the fountain pen does, like letting it sit overnight. It should be fine. There should be no reason to change when you have actual fountain pen ink in your fountain pen. You should be able to let it sit. So I want to see how that does, like, just overnight. Make sure it's not going to just dry up in there. No, I'm not gonna, like, leave it sit for a week, but thanks to doing these streams here every day, I feel pretty confident that I'm going to remember to check on it, especially since it's sitting right here on my desk, which is kind of a reminder in and of itself, because hopping into the stream every day. Yeah, a couple spots go a little more red. So right now I'm grabbing the Venetian Red Inktense, which, if I remember correctly, this is one of the colors that was not in the original line for the Inktense. So if you're into earth tones, this is probably a good one. I'm gonna let that sit kind of strong there. Don't really have a whole lot else. I'm thinning it out a little bit so I can transition this wash just a touch. And then I want to do a little bit of shading on the leg. Nice, and this does run as soon as you get water on it, which for this is perfect. So I just have that kind of Venetian red tone, and I'll be bringing that in, and this ink being water soluble is perfect up here to help imply some more shading. So I'm just gonna let it ride out and do its thing. Go ahead and wash out some of that. I'm gonna leave the shadows alone that are up here, but pretty much everywhere else, I'm gonna let that run. That's doing some slightly funky things. I didn't plan on that for this wash. Go a little more red up here. And by red, I mean Venetian red. Let that run into this. I'm trying to leave the shadow area alone. So like I said, I want these things to run together. I want this to make that go into some interesting tones. I'm going to come back over on some of this area to go ahead and apply that texture, but for right now I'm just doing a base wash. So I want to block in as much as I can. Oh, I forgot the ink down here. That's alright. Alright, we'll let that run. Grab a little bit more. Tint this a little darker. Oh, I missed a spot earlier. That's fine. Just grab a little bit more of the... It's funny, I originally thought I was going to go into the Autumn Brown, but seeing how the Venetian Red gets that grape ice pop and like really starts to do some fun things, it's like, nah, that's perfect. Alright, I'm going to try to leave this section a little lighter. I'm going to come back in and just soften that edge. Quick rinse, quick blot. Pull that away, let that edge soften. Alright, this should have been a little bit lighter, but what I'll do is I'll just increase the contrast around it. This side is more in shadow anyway, so that'll work. Just pop that in a little darker. Over here, just a touch darker. Bring that up. And I'm down with that. It's an interesting turn on this, really. Kind of liking it. This goes a little more orange. It's a little bit of a highlight. gives this a really surreal effect, though. Like, even though I feel like this is all like within tones that fit together, at the same time I'm also kind of like, I'm gonna shade this with a little bit of water. Just let those run. I don't want it to run too much. Yeah, I feel like the background is a little bit more industrial at the moment. I'm not sure how I feel about that right this second. Grabbing some more of this sepia ink, though. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go really dark up here. Then I'm going to come in with a little bit of water to help indicate some highlights. Just kind of at random. I'll let this do its own thing and be slightly mottled. It should be just enough to mix up for this section. I'm surprised my little one's not sleeping. Somebody doesn't like napping this time of day anymore. He did yesterday, though. I may even come back into this area later and scribble a little bit of the fountain pen. I really want this to be dark to help push this section further into the background, but I went with the sepia ink because he is in the foreground. And I'm not sure that was the right call, so I'm going to leave it. If I need to, I can go in with the ink black, like I did for the light up here. I'm trying to think, what do I want to do for this, the title? Because we have 10 minutes. It's just turning out so good, though. I'm very happy. This is a little bit strong, but that'll be fine when I add the texture. So that'll even out a little bit. I want to do really gentle little bit of the Venetian Red and just tone that just a touch more. I know that wash is probably going to settle with a hard edge, and that's fine. Like I said, when I come back and texture this, I think all of that texturing is going to be off camera. It's basically going to be the same thing that I was doing here with the pen, only I'll be doing it with the script liner and just dabbing in all of that. But yeah, I'm happy with where this is going. Definitely going to add the blue to the eyes with the Grape tint, which I can do that while we're on here. Where'd my audio go? There we go. Hello, audio. Okay, so I have some dark indigo. And I have cool gray. Those are the most blue tones out of the Grape tint. I'm gonna do this a little bit different. So here's a cool thing you can do with your water-soluble pencils if you haven't done this before. You can go ahead and just pick up a little bit on the tip of your brush, just wipe your brush. You can go at it like that. I've done this with the Inktense. I haven't had any issues with them re-wetting afterwards. And that's just to help me get in this little touch of blue. That did pick up a little bit of the fountain pen ink, unfortunately, so I'm gonna blot that. I'm just gonna come back at it. Go ahead and pull that line in from the other side. So, just Grabbing the pencil, little blot on the tip of the brush, because I can go pretty heavy with this, and then I can go back over it with the white. Blot a little bit of the moisture from this with the brush. So I'm going to do a zoom in later so I can really detail the eye, because it's really hard to make out from this little shot right now. But I'm happy with where that's at. We'll leave it alone. Under the hat brim, I do want to do a bit darker. I'm also thinking about this text. Let's see. So just to differentiate a touch, I'm going to go with the tinted charcoal and the burned embers, so I'm not doing everything sepia over here. I mean, it is right at the same value anyways, but I don't want everything being the same color tone. You can't tell what's what. Or at least at the moment. It's where my brain is at. I might change my mind and do that a lot darker. But anyways, yeah, so what else can we do? I didn't come back in and do that ladder. Let's see what's going on with that ladder. Let's see if I'm happy enough with it to just write on top of it. This edge should be a little bit darker and you should see the rungs a little bit better, but I feel comfortable enough that I can go ahead and do that with text in place. I don't feel like I would want to do that with like the bricks. That's why the bricks were done. Like, absolutely wanted them done. Because I don't want to just fiddle with it. Like this little edge here, that's pretty well defined with my pencil line, so I don't mind going around the text to do that. But super subtle textures and details? No, I'm not doing that around text. So there's where my brain is on that. This is why I've made some of the decisions that I have, and it's just what am I willing to put up with? And when you decide what you are willing to put up with, it makes a lot of other decisions a little bit easier. I think I'm going to stick with monochromatic for our headline here. Wow, what is this? Did I pick up an eraser bit? I think I picked up an eraser bit. I'm going to just blot this brush dry and see if I can move that. Yep, big eraser bit. That's annoying. Luckily this wash was like really, really fine as far as that little bit of blue. You could just as easily go in with the gray if that's something that you wanted to like follow along with, because that gray will give you a nice cool tone. It will appear blue-ish comparatively, but I figured I'd go ahead and touch that in. Or if you're working with the same ink sets, like the Shade and Tone set and the Lady Rose Trio, you could use the Bluegrass Velvet to go ahead and dot in the blue for the eye. It'll be slightly more on the green side, but it would still be a nice tone to just bring that little touch of color in. I'm actually like really, really pleased with how that bled together to go ahead and impart some more color. Right now I do feel like he doesn't quite match the surroundings, so I'm still thinking on that. I think I need to go ahead and add some more shading to go in, not just with the reds and the purple tones that we've been using. I use red loosely because this is Venetian Red. It's an earthy red. So most people look at it as like, that's kind of orangey. Well, it is kind of orangey. It's a very earthy red. It's like a red-orange. There are more orangey tones in this set, but I digress. I really like the granular texture that I see in the autumn brown, so I will probably bring that in for some of the shading. I also want to go there with some of the more grayer tones that we have, like with the Inktense sepia ink and the burnt earth. That too, like both of those are a little bit more neutral and gritty. I want to bring that in to tone him down a little bit, because right now he doesn't quite fit in this world. Like I feel like these are nice muted tones, so it's not like he's a neon sign here, but yeah, it's certainly not perfect. But yeah, with our text, I think I'm gonna start off with the white and do the PI Pulpo Presents. I have the script liner for that. I'm just going to do a regular block type font. I don't know if I want to do outlines for anything, but I know that the white will stand out really well up here. And I haven't practiced this at all. I haven't done any of this in like the layout ideas in Photoshop or anything, so it's just kind of whatever it is, it is. But I do have other opaque tones, and I can also pull out gouache if I feel I must. I kind of want it to be a little rough, maybe. I was just mixing this right on top of the pan, but I've moved this off to be a mixture in the palettes, so I have that not varying thickness too much. So that's one thing about having like a big wet spot on top of your pan. You'll slowly get more and more opaque and a little bit more gummy. Gummy's probably the wrong word, but the viscosity of it just increases so much and it becomes really, really heavy. While I want a heavy pigment load, so this is opaque, I don't want it to the point that it's not going to flow on the script liner. You definitely, want to keep enough moisture so your paint will flow. This will be... I feel like I went a little further than I needed to with those letters. Back into our pirate adventure here. I'm going to thicken this line just a touch more. I'm going to leave it. We'll do lowercase for the name. So if you're just joining us today, you missed yesterday's. Pulpo is Spanish for octopus. And I also like that, pulp is part of the name, so where this is like Film Noir, I like this because it also reminds me of like the old pulp novels. My O kind of got away from me here. I'm just reworking it, making it rounder. And adjust this little edge, maybe. That's better. I'm gonna let it be kind of like diagonal. So the question is, do I have enough room for presents up there? Bring it down here. I could arc it. I could bring it back around this way. That O's a little high for doing that, but no, I really like the going diagonal. That way I'm not gonna crash into here necessarily. Yeah, I think I'll go with that. I'm going to widen this a little bit more. Get just a little more water on the brush. Okay, now I have to think about what color I want the rest of the text. I may go with the black. I feel like I should have gone through my brushes to find like a nice little flat. I'm sure I have a really skinny flat somewhere. It's one of those brushes I don't use very often, but I feel like that would be perfect for this. Not this particular part, but the next lines. Doing the high tide homicide. Should we do dots for PI? Oh, well, we'll come over to Twitch, see what's going on. Nope. No word. Alright, so we'll keep on going. Hopefully I don't misspell anything. I'm doing presents slightly smaller. Just slightly. And there's this big old cat hair right there. Alright, I'm gonna take a quick beverage break just for a second here because hands are shaking a little bit and I want to give them a second. So I'm here, I'm not stepping too far away, just opening a can. Alright. I am dead set on getting this lettering done, so as long as my my youngest doesn't chime in too much, we're gonna power right through. It is actually really comforting to do lettering for me. Like I don't do lettering professionally or anything, but it's both relaxing and a challenge. There's a calmness to letters for me because they're very organized form. Other things you can draw can be very ambiguous, but a letter is a letter, and if it's not, it's very easily not. My E's are the wrong size compared to each other. Yeah. I don't like that this is leaning a little bit more than it should be. touch more forward. That's a little better. My line's a little bit off. This should come down a little further. That'll improve that. And the same thing for the end of this P. Down a little further. Yeah, I didn't give myself guidelines or anything. You can see it was just entirely off the cuff. I'm debating, do I want to do colon? Just leave it. Kinda iffy on punctuation in this. I feel like I should look at some more 40s covers. Yeah, so even though it says Film Noir, it's kind of like, it could be a movie poster. It could be a book. I don't know. To me, it can be either. Yeah, this has a little bit of a hard edge on it, but that'll get softened out later. Let's see. What do I want to write High Tide Homicide in? Ooh, you know what? If I do that in the red, in the Venetian Red, that'll add some color back here. I think I will. No, there's a lot more that needs work here. Like the whole step area needs to be darkened. A lot more shading down here on the ground. There's not so much of this should be midtones, and the sailor definitely needs a little more work as far as color. You know what? Well, I also have this white out though. Do his little hat. Oh, I didn't want those lines to connect. I'm gonna have to come back in and change that. That's fine. And then, this guy would probably be wearing like khaki. At least, I don't know, my imaginary navy. I'm gonna let this mix be a little bit watery, so you just come in and detail him just a touch. I feel like I'm at a point where I need to indicate a little bit of color elsewhere to help kind of bring this together a little bit. I should not be doing this with the script liner. I get so comfortable with the brush in my hand. I try to do things I'm just not really meant to do. It was great for his arms though, and the detail here on the collar. I'll add a little bit of blue later. I'll just give the collar a little blue stripe. I want to push that whole military thing. Or should it be black? I don't know, what color are sailor uniforms? I don't want to put them in, like, pure white. Just doing a quick sailor outfit. I pick terrible colors. ends because I don't want to see a bunch of sailor dresses. A lot of this is variations on white, blue, black, occasionally a touch of red. Oh well, I'm gonna leave that. I don't know why I was thinking khaki. I guess the pants should be blue too. I don't know if I want to do that much color in this. It's like I was feeling like I want to add some color, like that little touch of blue. But I guess. But the shoes are definitely black. Because they're so far back in the scene. I'm gonna see if I can grab a little bit of the which one were you? Tinted charcoal in burnt earth. So I want this to have that little bit of a cooler tone because of how far back he is in the picture. Yeah, I'm kind of in a debate, like, do I want to include some blue back here? Because I could do his pants blue. I think I'm not. I think I'm going to... I might do the blue stripe on the shirt, but for the rest of the blue indication, I think I'm going to go with the graphite. This is the Graphitin in Graphite Gray. So I want some color, but I don't want to push like color everywhere. And the Graphite Gray is very cool compared to everything else that we've been using. I just kind of want this here to say like that these pants are a different color. Or maybe you can't pick it up because of distance or whatnot. Which makes it seem silly for me to include like any of the blue on the sailor. I think I might just do that in graphite too. The white going over graphite lines though actually looks really cool, like literally cool. Like that winds up creating a bluish tint on its own. So maybe that is my my blue back here this far in the frame. That is too much water. I'm working this a little bit. I have just a little bit too much water on this one leg. I mean, that should be okay because he's closer to the light source, so maybe that'll look like a highlight. What do I want to do for his face? I think I'm gonna go with a little bit of the regular Inktense sepia for the face and the hands. Ooh, that is too dark. I should have mixed that with water. I just want the implication of like there's some skin tones going on, but that went way, way too dark. I'm gonna blot that hand in a moment. I'm just grabbing pigment. Indicate face. Basically just that his skin's a bit darker than the mid-tone here. Yeah, blotting that hand. I don't mind it being a little bit dark because it's shadow. Grabbing a little bit from that puddle of the sepia ink from earlier. Just a hint of shadow here on the hat. Want real light, because I feel like that's probably likely to lift. Just the teeniest bit. Okay, and now I'm 20 minutes over. My small one is napping, which is nice. I could have gone darker with those shadows. Just gonna kind of very gently. Getting that a bit. Yeah, that looks better. Alright. Oh yeah, text. That's what I was thinking. Ow. So I hit my knuckles trying to get to my brushes. Do I have an itty bitty brush? I have my filbert. I have a number 4 filbert out. I think that'll work, and I can just square off the edges with the script liner if I need to. Oh, am I? My camera's saying low battery now, so I'm gonna try to hurry. So I kind of want to get this finished. Well, I mean, I want to get the text on. I know this is not finished. This is certainly not finished, but this might be as far as I'll take it for purposes of this challenge, and then just show you the update later, assuming I get to it. But yeah, I thought I was going to go in with the Venetian Red. Mixing up a puddle of that, moving it onto the palette. I don't remember if this was a mix on the palette. I think it was. I think it was when I was painting the PI Pulpo here. Alright, so we'll do that to indicate some more color. Oop. Somehow I keep finding little eraser bits. They're making me nuts. Alright. Our sailor should be mostly dry. I'm gonna square up these edges later. Don't worry about it later. I'm gonna do high tide on this line. Oh, I don't like that. I'm gonna do the G, like an uppercase G, but in here. Oh, I like how wide this is, but I feel like the filbert was a terrible choice. All of these edges are... I need to fix this. This is gonna make me nuts. At the very least, like, let's make it rounded. Now, if your brain is like mine, I'm glad that we're similar, that I can be working on this right now to fix it. Because I know that was rough. Seeing all these weird edges. And if your brain's not like mine, I'm sorry. Because I wanted to get this text done really fast, at the same time I don't want my brain just itching because of it sitting there. So, yeah, that's a fun place. Okay, so tide will go over this way. I don't even have to worry about that. I figure I'll just have everything offset. On the bottom. Oh, I'm so sorry. Running way over. I've been doing that with a lot of these challenge pieces because I've been going in with like so much detail. It's like my original challenge parameters kind of gone out the window a touch. Apparently I'm not going in to square up the edges. Apparently I'm just gonna go with this bubbly font, which I guess kind of fits. Like, I'm not disliking it. It's probably been a little bit more opaque. This feels a little ending of Phantom of the Opera-ish. My font is getting slightly bigger. I need to work on that. Trying to do this a little light. Make sure my E winds up a little small. That's not quite as bright as I had hoped. I think I may go back over this with like an outline. I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna go slightly to the left, or so slightly. I want to make sure I have enough room to write Homicide. It's funny. It's been so long since I've used a filbert. I love them for blending and the lines that I get out of them with acrylic, but it's definitely feeling a little different using it here. I may have actually hit the end of the music. Ooh, that M is low. And that is leaning. I should have given myself at least a guideline to write on against. Trying to think, like, is there anything I can do to kind of correct that? And I'm thinking probably just Photoshop. like I have to get reacquainted with filberts. Wow. I think of the last time I did use a filbert. It's probably been like 4 years. It was funny because like I felt so much that like I needed to have a filbert with my watercolor stuff, and I bought this and I just have not been using it. I'm gonna bring this H down just a little bit. I feel like that might at least offset everything else enough that it seems a little bit better. I don't know. I feel like my text has gone a little wonky. I'm gonna have to like Photoshop the daylights out of this to fix it though. No, my letters are a little too close. I don't know. I don't know if I like it. My lettering got so far off track there, but I hate it. I hate my lettering. It's not so much the letter shapes, but I'll grab my ruler and I'll show you exactly what I mean, because if this isn't an eyesore to you, I don't know what is. Look at that line. That E is too high, the D is too high, the I is too high. I could probably stretch the eyes to make them come down a little closer. But like, yeah, this whole line is... Oy. That's just bad. I'm sorry to make you stick around with that, because that is making my brain itch so much right now. As far as the other line, I'm just gonna have to do it this way because that eye is still really wet. So it's not as bad. I only have a little bit extending past the line. Birds are high tide. Yeah. Yeah, there's that. I think I am going to go with black outlining. Like the proper Inktense black. Like this. And that'll make this pop a little bit better, because some of it does kind of get lost as it gets towards the foreground here. I might be able to go ahead and fix some of it. I'll probably scan it first, because I've been really enjoying this piece up until now. Alright. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my rim lighting. I really shouldn't be doing my rim lighting. I should just be capping off today. But I feel like I want that here before I'm posting this online. I don't know if you're still with me. Thanks so much for hanging on this long. Do a touch of the storm gray down here. And it looks like that's a bit stronger towards the top. I think I'm gonna grab a tiny bit of the storm gray. And just mix that with the white. I grabbed the script liner. I'm gonna soften that shadow just a touch. I mean, not shadow, wow. Soften that highlight just a touch. I can go back over that with some more white if I feel like that's not enough contrast. Yeah, I think I want to come in with a little bit more white. And since that storm gray mix is still pretty wet, this is not going to go quite as far as I want. And that's okay. I'm going to bring just a touch of this over here. Further indicate form. Alrighty, so here we are, an extra half hour plus, and well, at least my little one's getting a nap. I feel like there's still so much I wanted to do with this. It's been fun. I want to get some more texture in our octopus. I want to detail that eye. I want to get the rest of this tone situation figured out because I didn't come down this area enough. I want to darken these steps. Still so much to do for this to be quote-unquote finished. I just want to try erasing here, like really strongly, and see about lifting for that window ledge. Or see if that's not possible. Could be either. But yeah, it's been fun. I like the bit of texture I have. I'm cringing at my lettering. I should have given myself guidelines, but I was hesitant about having to erase later. Oh well. It's been fun. This is definitely going into a better place. It's just not as far finished as I would hope. Let's go ahead and pop this ruler off to the side. I'm gonna move my brushes out of the way. Maybe I'll lean this way for today's picture. I don't know. But thank you so much for joining me today, for toughing it out. I think this might be it for this one on camera, and then I'll move forward with some of the other prompts. And maybe just show you a status update as I go. I have a lot more pieces getting added to that. But here we are on the 14th, and this is the day 8 prompt. So I need to stop putting so much detail in these. I need a few that are just sketches and that I'm happy with leaving them there, because I've taken so many ideas and just started running with them. And it's a fun part of the process, but it's also like not conducive to me knocking out all 31 days for this challenge. So I definitely need to darken values here. Lots to do, but I'm happy. It's been a wonderful journey, and I appreciate you coming along with me for it. Go ahead and start getting stuff arranged for my thumbnail. Wow, I can brain, right? Alright. So I'm gonna hop off and get our stuff done, uploaded, and hope you'll stop by tomorrow and see what we're doing tomorrow, because I have no idea right now. I've been so in tune with this that I don't even know where we're going next. So feel free to join me if you want to see what randomness takes us into the next direction. So, as always, keep painting, drawing, do your art thing, and have a great night.